Okay, tea, check. Knife, check. You're here. I'm here. I think we're ready. So welcome back everybody to 30 Days of Tarot. We're just kind of ramping up to the halfway point, aren't we? You know, sometimes it feels like it's been forever. Sometimes it feels like we just started. I don't know, what is time? Something interesting that I discovered this year, maybe you guys knew this or maybe not, is that on Venus, a year is actually shorter than a day. So in the time that it takes for Venus to make a complete orbit around the sun, there's only been one sunrise and one sunset. Isn't that crazy? It like changed my concept of thinking what a day or a year is, in the sense that a day is not determined as a division of a year. A day is its own thing, and it has to do with the rotation of the planet not being just like a segment of the year, that they're two completely separate operating things. So now I like to talk about what I call Venus time, when it seems like the day is dragging on and taking forever, but it seems like the year went by so fast. So yeah, there you go. So maybe this realm of strangeness is a little bit appropriate for the deck that I'm going to be showing you guys today. I think that it is going to be a little bit strange, definitely surreal. So let's go ahead and get into it. So this is a deck that I've had for a while, and it's a deck I was looking for a long time. You know, you can set up the eBay alerts where when something that you've been looking for finally becomes available, they'll email you. That's what I do for decks that are rare that I'm looking for, and a lot of times even if I see it available, I don't want to pay the price that's on there, so I'll get an email alert, wait till I see one that is less expensive. And that was the case with this deck. I had seen decks going for hundreds of dollars, and I wanted it, but I was not willing to pay that much. And towards the end of last year, I ended up caving in when I found this deck available for $100. I know that is a lot to pay for a tarot deck, but it was much less than I had seen it for previously. I really wanted it. I figured it's not going to depreciate in value, so I'm going to go ahead and get it. And what this deck is, it's called the Tarot of the Imagination. And it's by an artist named Ferenc Pinter. I think that's how you say it. He's a Hungarian artist that was actually born in Italy in 1931 in a northwestern Italian coastal town called Liguria, to a Hungarian father and an Italian mother. And this is actually coming from Russia. Now here is where things with this deck start to get a little bit wonky. We will see what I have here. But I went online just before filming this. Like I said, I've had this all the way since January. Got it at the end of last year. So I went to see if there was any decks currently on eBay so that I could tell you guys if they're available. And I ended up seeing first this deck for $22. And I was like, wait, what? Did it get reissued? Then I saw another one for $45. Then I saw a few more for $200 like I was used to seeing. And it looked like these cheaper decks were coming from the Ukraine. And what I'm thinking is that they might be knockoff decks, not originals. It might have been reissued. I'm not sure. I don't know if I got ripped off. I don't know if this is original. I think this was originally a used deck that I still paid that much for. So we'll see when I open it. And I don't know. I know that there's other decks that I've ended up getting that are knockoffs, and I have mixed feelings about it. No, I don't think it's right to take other people's artwork and copy it and sell it, or other people's copyrighted work. At the same time, if there's things that are never going to be in print ever again, and I don't want to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and this is a way for me to get something, you know, I don't knowingly buy knockoff decks, but sometimes it happens. So let's take a look at what we've got here. This is a surrealist tarot deck, and it's painted in fine oils, and I think that you guys are going to find that it's really, really unique. I've looked at a lot of the images online, and I'm really excited to finally have it. Okay, so here is the box, and we see here the Lo Scarabeo seal, and it does say on the bottom here, made in Italy. The ones that I did see online that were the cheaper ones did say in the description that they were printed in China. So that makes me think that maybe this is not a knockoff deck, that this is the original. It does have the ISBN number on it, so that's a good sign. It says on the back here, 22 major arcana, 56 minor, with divinatory instructions fragments, anxiety, desires, dreams, hopes, observations, memories, human imagination. Okay, let's take a look. As I said, I bought this knowing that it was a used deck, but it said that it was in perfect condition. And I wasn't necessarily buying this deck for the purpose of doing readings, but just for the purpose of meditation, exploration, the artwork, really. So I didn't mind, and it looks like I can see that it's really, really in nice condition. And everything looks legitimate here. It's got the little booklet, and it does say 2000 copyright Lo Scarabeo, which is when this did come out, and it has all the information here. So again, it doesn't look like it's a knockoff. It doesn't say anything about printed in China. I think that this, okay, I feel better now. I don't think that I got ripped off. So as I said, the original decks that I've been able to find online are going for about $175, $200. So you guys know that I'm a research junkie, and I'm always trying to dive into the lives of the artist and find out things about them. I wasn't able to find a ton out about this artist. There is a memorial website of his works that I was able to find. It's in Italian, but you can see some of his paintings on there, and I'll leave that site down below. He did pass away in 2008. And I thought that it would be a little bit interesting to look into the state of the world that he was living in at the time that he was growing up, and what may have been an influence for him in the creation of this deck. So I'm just going to go ahead and start showing you these images. Here's the title card, Il Tarocchi, and because he was in Italy at the time that he created this deck, it's no surprise that it was printed by Lo Scarabeo. This is the back of the card. We see this woman here. As I said, all painted in oils. Okay. Let's go ahead and start there with the Fool. And you can see, yes, in traditional Lo Scarabeo style, they're giving 4 different, actually 6 different languages that we see here. I think I remember seeing that one of the languages was Flemish, actually. And the Fool looking a little bit different than we're used to seeing him. He's got a bird in a cage here rather than his usual dog next to him. So first of all, we've got to consider that Ferenc was only 11 years old at the onset of World War II. And Italy in the 1940s was still under the fascist regime of Mussolini, right? Wow, this is the High Priestess. What do you guys think? Get a little bit further in, yeah? So in 1940, his family moved to Budapest. And from what I could find, it sounded like he may have been orphaned shortly thereafter. He tried to enter the Academy of Fine Arts while in Budapest, but was not admitted for his divergence with the communist ideas at the time. Love that emperor. Hungary was the first communist state created in 1919 and was under Soviet military occupation, which basically strong-armed and forced all of the other parties to go along with what they say and to relinquish control. Here's a beautiful lovers. They remind me a little bit in tone. Those of you who know the tarot studio, Baba Studios, their Czech-based studio, kind of more fine art style. Almost like if you cross that with the Dali deck, that's what I'm kind of getting here. So in 1953, at the death of Stalin, a shift began in Hungary, and a new leader whose name was Imre Nagy was appointed, and he removed the state control of mass media, made changes to liberalize the economy, and he released a lot of the political prisoners. Here's the Hermit. He's like in this cave there. So in 1956, we have the onset of the Hungarian Revolution, and that started just as a peaceful student protest against the Soviet occupation. And after some of the students got arrested and protesters were trying to help free them, police basically started shooting into the crowd. And before you know it, there's riots all over the city. And that is how that uprising and revolution began. Now, that went on for a few months before Russia sent in the Red Army and the Hungarian uprising was defeated and overpowered. And many were imprisoned and many were executed. Okay, this is one that is pretty funny and strange and surreal. This is the Hanged Man, and we actually have this guy hanging, like mucus coming out of this guy's nose. Do you see that? This little form here? Wow, pretty trippy, right? So it's at that time when all of this chaos is happening that Pinter left Hungary again and went back to Italy. And I don't think you can blame him for that, right? And there's death, of course. And he ended up going to Milan. In Milan, he was commissioned for a series of advertising illustrations, and he did posters. And so I think that that's interesting that he was doing advertising illustration, especially after we talked about that when we opened the Linweave Tarot. And I guess maybe that's just a way for artists to make a living before they can just make a living off their own artwork themselves. Here we see El Diablo. So he ended up entering into a contract for a publishing company called Mondadori. And it was a publisher who focused on culture and who, to this day, is now the biggest publishing house in Italy. And he collaborated with them for over 32 years. He illustrated and painted many covers for their books and their magazines. And he did spy series stories. He did covers for translations of Agatha Christie books. I remember reading those when I was younger. And so all the while back in Hungary, there was still this Soviet control and was presided over by a communist leader, János Kadar. For 30 years, he ran the country. And he retired in 1988. And at that time, the activists in Hungary really started pressuring for a change. And a lot of democratic federations and forums began to come together. All of a sudden, activism was rising, basically to a point that they had not seen back since the revolution in 1956. And in 1989, everything shifted. It was the end of the rule of communism in Hungary. And the constitution was completely rewritten, and the name was changed to the Republic of Hungary, and separate branches of government were created. So they had the judiciary and legislative and executive branch, just like we have in the US. And guarantees were made for human and civil rights. And although this artist was living in Italy this whole time, I find it very interesting that the same year that all of this happened and that there was this coming together and this unity that was going on in Hungary as people were basically getting their country back, that was the same year that Ferenc created his first 22 tarot trumps. Now, I don't know if he was approached by Lo Scarabeo, but they were the ones that published back in 1989 just the 22 images that I've just shared with you. So these 22 were put out, and apparently at that time, Lo Scarabeo was much more interested in putting out kind of these fine artworks than they were necessarily worrying about complete decks for divination. I love the star. She's fantastic. And I was able to find this deck in the Encyclopedia, not in that first volume, but look at this fourth volume. It's the thickest one yet. So we see it here on page 380. And it says, the Tarot of Imagination contains images that are familiar from photography and art just beyond definite identification, leaving our imagination to fill in the context. It would appear that the mind can contain an unreal landscape consisting of symbols and sensations which can filter reality, softening it into a recognizable form. More than a dream landscape, it is a symbolic representation of reality without a precise landscape. And it speaks about the original Major Arcana deck. The cards, or began working on them in 1989 and published it apparently in 1991. And it wasn't for another 10 years that he would put out the minors, and he did. So in the year 1999, he began working on the minor cards, and I'm going to show those to you now. And in 2001, they were finally printed and put out as an entire deck. Here it looks like we have the Ace of Coins. And with these cards, we see that there is no longer any words on them, which I just find so much better aesthetically. You guys know that. But we still see these borders here. And no, I won't be trimming these cards as they are valuable. But I would have loved to see these cards just printed in a borderless version. The 3, we see the sky just... These scenes are just totally a departure from what we might be used to. And it just really gives us so much to think about. Just look at these 2 people here meeting in the 4 of Pentacles. We see a few more people up here. Such an interesting scene. And doesn't it leave so much for our imagination to just explore what is going on in these? I just absolutely love it. And I love that because they're painted, you know, it's not the typical black outline that we see with an illustration that's colored in. There's no need for outline, and you just kind of get this sense of things being a little bit undefined. Wow, there's a lot going on in this 7 of Cups. We see what looks like a rabbi studying the Torah here, a woman with a book here. There's a lot of depth in that card. And I just think, wow, what a complete body of work. Look at that. Wow. The 10 of Pentacles, and we see tourists here in Egypt. This almost looks like a photograph if you look at it from far away, almost like a postcard, right? Let's take a look at some of our court cards. There's the first 2. That would be the Page and Knight. There's the Queen and the King. Cool. These remind me of the portraits that we saw back in the Moonchild, don't they? Where you have this very sort of regal, like the bust, the face portrait. And there we have a very intense Ace of Swords. Looks like we've got, I don't know if this is a decapitated head or if it's somebody, that's what it looks like though, the executioner. All right. There's the 2. And the swords, this absolutely, we can see some of the inspiration or maybe the effects of some of the things that Ferenz had to face during his lifetime and things that were going on in his country and going on abroad as well. Wow, look at that. This almost gives me a little bit of what I would imagine when I think of him illustrating spy novels, right? It looks like James Bond sort of image there. That's pretty cool. I love these so much. I am just really, really excited about these. It's so funny that this is a tarot deck because I feel like it's just all of these little miniature works of art, and to actually take the time to go ahead and sit with these. Doesn't this look like a card we already saw? Yeah, look at this, because this was the 2 of Swords. It's like they're from part of the same scene. These fighters with the shields. Interesting. And again, I just think of all of the things that a young, impressionable, obviously sensitive child for the fact of being interested in the fine arts must have experienced being in that part of the world at that time. I mean, anybody obviously who lived through World War II. Okay, that's really, really cool with that shadow there. Now we're getting into the cups. So let's see how the tone changes. We see the color on the background changes. And in the 4 of Cups, this is a cool interpretation. This actually reminds me a little bit of what the imagery would be for a classic rider card. It's sort of the, you know, meet me at the Eiffel Tower, meet me at the party. Maybe there's a proposal going on here, maybe an indecent proposal. Beautiful. Oh, this is an intense one. The 6 of Cups, we got these arms coming out of the eye here. I mean, wow. I feel very, very inspired looking at this deck. I guess it wouldn't be for everyone. I mean, as I said, the imagery is strange, but I love the surreal. I think that it's really fascinating. This is really cool. We see almost like these silhouettes, but then they have the negative space where you're looking right through them at the background. Isn't that a gorgeous image? That's the Ten of Cups. It really does convey an emotion, doesn't it? Okay. Let's look at the final court cards. There's the Knight, the Queen, and the King. He reminds me of the guy that's on the Nine of Cups in the Rider-Waite. Same kind of style of hat. Okay, here is the last suit of Wands. Wow. Yeah. Now, I hadn't seen some of these images, and I'm glad to know that my idea was not totally crazy to talk about some of the state of the world and the effect there, because it doesn't get much more clear than a bomb dropping from the sky, right? Wow. Blessing that's going on there. Let's get Jesus figure, right? The Wands red in the background. Kind of a saucy lady there. And this guy reading. There's a lot of this sort of like juxtaposition of like man and woman and doing two different things. Look at this. We see he's sitting here, he's fishing, he's sitting on some kind of a Soviet poster here. And you know, a lot of propaganda went along with that. I love this. I love when you can see the image of somebody and it just, you know, it's not overly defined, but you feel like you could know this person, while at the same time it doesn't look like anybody specific. There's the Page, Knight, Queen, and the King. Wow. Well, you guys, I am really in love with this deck. And not disappointed. I guess this makes up for some of that weird transparent tarot that I saw yesterday. So, as I said, I did see some copies of this on eBay going for really, really reasonable. I mean, there was one or two that were like $22. I can't promise that it's the original. I doubt that it is. It looks like it's a reprinted deck, but just know that it's there and it's an option, and I'll let you find it on your own. I'm not going to leave links down below to knockoff decks or decks that I'm not sure about. And if money is no object, then you definitely can go and get an original deck, because those are available. But like I said, you're probably going to pay a couple $100s. So I thank you guys so much for taking the time to look with me at the Tarot of the Imagination. I hope that you guys are having a great weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.